some people think, well, if you're a go-giver, you've got to say yes to everybody, and you've got to, no, that's not what being a go-giver is about at all. In fact, as a go-giver, you tend to be very, very successful, and as such, you've always got people asking you to do things. And, no one has the time, the energy, the bandwidth, the desire, or whatever, to do everything that people ask them to do. It's not always appropriate to do so, and it's not. So you've got to be able to say no. A go-giver must be able to say no, but to do it in a way that honors the other person, as well as honoring their own boundaries.
Welcome to Clothing Culture, a fashion industry podcast at the intersection of technology and innovation. I'm Emily Lane.
And I'm Bret Schnitker. We speak with experts and disruptors who are moving the industry forward and discuss solutions to real industry challenges.
Clothing Culture is produced by Stars Design Group, a global design and production house with more than 30 years of experience. Welcome back to another episode of Clothing Culture. Today is a very special day for me. We have welcomed one of my personal author heroes to have a conversation with us today. So it's a little bit of a different format because usually we are really focused on our own special niche of the apparel industry, but the information that we're going to talk through today is applicable to no matter what industry you're in. We're welcoming in best-selling author to the tune of millions of copies of books, which is just phenomenal.
You've bought half of those, I think.
Yeah, give
and
them away.
Pass them out to everyone.
Speak or mentor to all people from the average Joe to the top high-level CEO. It is just my delight to share and introduce Bob Burg to this conversation. Hello, Bob.
Hi, Bret and Emily. It's so great to be with both of you. Wow.
Oh, my gosh. Well, as Bret mentioned, I have given away a lot of your books. It is something that your books stay in my library, and anytime somebody new comes to the team, I'm the first to say, your first job here is to read this book.
Wow, what a compliment.
So The Go-Giver is an all-time favorite of mine. And, it has, as you mentioned, Bob, in our pre-discussion, it's one of those books that when you read it, it just intuitively in your heart feels like it makes perfect sense. And I've had the pleasure of practicing this philosophy in life and work and felt its value. And so it just really is exciting to me that we're going to get to share this information with our family today.
Well, thank you. It's truly an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So for those of our followers that aren't familiar with The Go-Giver, do you mind just sharing a brief overview of the story itself?
Yeah, and this was co-authored with John David Mann, who's an absolutely brilliant writer and storyteller. And really, his expert writing made the characters and the story come alive. And it's about a guy named Joe, and Joe is he's a good guy. He's sort of an up and coming, ambitious, aggressive, wants to make the sale and have everything. But and again, he's a good guy, but his focus is in the wrong place. It's all about who owes what to him and why he should be successful. Just be little bit of that entitled. If I just do this, then everything should come to me. And he really learns a valuable lesson from a one main mentor and then several others. And it really comes down to this. It's that shifting your focus, and this is really where it begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. And not for some, kind of way out there, woo-woo, magical, mystical, kind of, just give and do good things and good things. No, not at all. It's actually much more rational than that. It really comes down to this. When you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire. When looking not so much at yourself, but at how to help them solve and overcome their problems and challenges. When you can move off of you and onto helping move them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. And really, they want to tell the world all about you. They want to be what we call your personal walking ambassadors. And that's really, the premise of the entire story.
I love it.
That's great.
Yeah.
In the story, you and Emily kind of inadvertently talked about the average Joe. Joe is the actual.
And that was his name. That was the average Joe or Josephine, right? We've all been there. That person who just, had good intention, was willing to work at it, but just something wasn't quite there. We've all been there.
Yeah, and I think the story tells, him going through this amazing awakening, understanding these 5 laws, and it changes things around him. When you started and came up with the idea for the book, was this an awareness that happened in your own personal life? Is this a journey that a mentor kind of filled you in on? How did this all come about?
Yeah, great question. And it's sort of both. I mean, I was
in a dream,
No, not
in
a dream.
Vision.
So much. No, I'm not that smart. I don't have those kinds of visions and stuff. But I was very fortunate to be raised by 2 wonderful people. Very blessed to have a great mom and dad, and so did John. And so I got to just watch how to be a decent person, right? How to, treat people well, and how to go out of your way to be good to others and to bring value to others. But then, you get into the business world and you see people doing things in certain ways, and you see people doing things in a way that seems good and in a way that doesn't seem good. And you see people have different results, and sometimes it seems like the wrong results happen, and you wonder, but you begin to see patterns develop. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I did notice was that the people who were the most successful financially, as well as what seemed to be emotionally and relationally and all those other ways, and sustainably so, okay? Mm-hmm. These were the people who were always focused on what they were giving to others. Not in a self-sacrificial way. No, not at all. Yeah. But in a good way, an intelligent way, a way that moved everybody forward and brought, improved everyone's lot. And but a big thing that did happen once, I'd been in sales for a couple of years and had done fairly well after a slow start because I had no sales experience when I began, but fortunately I had found some books that were very helpful, and I started going to seminars and all that. A couple of years, doing pretty well. Go to a different company, and I'm selling another product, and I was in a slump, and I could not seem to get out of that slump. And I made a young salesperson's mistake, and that is panicking. And as I did that, I was focusing not on my customers, I was focusing on myself, right?
Yeah.
And there was a guy at the office where I worked. He was not in the sales department. I think he was an engineer or something, and he retired soon after that. And I didn't know him well, but nice guy, quiet, didn't say much, but whenever he did say something, it was always rather profound. And
something like the character in your book that gives Joe some advice in the office. Very strangely familiar.
Yeah. And so I think he saw me as sort of a Joe, a guy with good potential, but who was not focused in the right direction. And he said to me, Burg, he was a last name kind of guy. He said, Burg, can I give you some advice? And I said, yeah, please do. I need it. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he continued, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It's not the target itself. Your target is serving others. And that's when it hit me that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the products or services, as important as those are, and they are. That's never what it's about. Great salesmanship is about the other person. It's about that person whose life you're trying to bring value to, or probably more accurately, you can say it's about that other person's life being better just because you are part of it. And I think if we approach sales from that foundational premise, then we're really always 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
Yeah.
It's really important as you're engaging with people to have those ears open and truly be thoughtfully listening so that you can know those opportunities where you can help make meaningful connections for them or provide value.
Yes.
Yeah, really, like to your point, a lot of people might ask, well, how do I know what they really want? And it comes through another big key skill of Emily's is asking a lot of questions.
Yes.
You've got to really focus on the customer and ask them questions to understand what value you can bring to them.
That's right, because value is always in the eyes of the beholder.
Right.
When you think about it and people say, well, what does value really mean? It's a word that's used all the time, but what is, and I like to say, when we talk about value, compare it to price, because people think it's the same thing, but it's not.
It's
See, price is a
different.
dollar figure.
Yes.
Price is a dollar
Right.
figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It simply is what it is.
Yep.
Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another person that they will willingly, let's say in this case, exchange their money for it and be glad they did while you make a healthy profit? And it goes far beyond just the intrinsic value of the product or service. It's the entire experience that you're providing them. It's the excellence, it's the consistency, it's the attention you provide, it's the empathy, it's the appreciation, it's everything at every single touch point that makes them feel good about themselves, that makes them feel good about you, that makes them feel good about the situation.
Yeah, it's interesting in today's world, we want to be transactional behind a wall. There's, chat boxes, there's automatic things, and this whole very important relational aspect of client interaction seems to be contrary to some movement forward in the modern day, but there's no replacing developing a great relationship with somebody, because it lasts a very long time.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, we say that, and Sam, and one of the mentors in the story, had said this to Joe, that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
There's no faster, more powerful, more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by genuinely and authentically moving from that I focus or me focus to that other focus, or as Sam put it, making your win all about the other person's win. And, if I may add one thing to that, there are people who, if they haven't read the book or haven't sort of been exposed to this kind of teaching, I say, well, placing their interests first. I mean, that sounds all nicey nice and everything, but does that really work? Well, I would say this, and I used to it when I spoke all over in front of sales audiences. I'm 66 now, so I don't travel anywhere. I don't get on a plane to speak. So I said I used to, right? And so I'd start out by saying nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
Right.
Right? No one's going to buy from you because you need the money. And you know what? Nobody's going to buy from you just because you're a really nice person. Right. People are going to buy from you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And when you think about it, that's the only reason why anyone should buy from you, from me, from anyone else. But this is great news for that entrepreneur or sales professional who really has a heart for bringing value to the other person. And so when we say place the other person's interest first, we don't mean that again in a self-sacrificial doormat-y type of way, not at all. What we mean is, if you want this sale to take place, you're going to have to put your self-interest to the side and focus totally and absolutely on the value that they would be deriving from this.
There are some phrases in our business world that I would say maybe don't do people real favors. Things like the concepts of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and things that really go against some of this value chain that you're really talking about. What are some of those key phrases that you think people should be striking from their business vocabulary?
Yeah, well, when you talk about the scratch my back and I'll scratch you, or I scratch your back, you scratch, whatever it is, that's that 50-50 is a losing proposition that Sam was talking about. And he said what it really is 100. And that is just focus 100% on bringing value to that person. Forget about what's in for you. And here's the thing. And people, I think, sometimes misinterpret this. They'll say, well, Burg and Mann, they're saying, give without expectation. And that's, I understand what they mean, but I think what they really mean is this. Give without attachment to the results. See, I want people to have positive expectation. Why wouldn't we? Now, it doesn't have to be from that person, but it means that if you're providing immense value to the lives of lots and lots of people on an ongoing, consistent basis, you're creating that what we call benevolent context for your success. So if you're doing this, you should expect to do really, really well, okay? Yeah. That's different, though, from being attached to the results. Because when you're emotionally attached to a specific result, it means that you're not able to have peace of mind with the process itself, right?
Right.
And so it's really just it's understanding that to the degree that you're able to provide value to the marketplace, you're going to receive, and that is there's nothing that takes faith in that way to think, I have to have faith that that's going to happen. No, I'd say it takes more faith to think that you're going to do well if you don't provide value to others.
Yeah.
Because no one's buying from you unless you're, providing value to them.
And you kind of put Joe in that position. It's not, whatever he's doing there isn't working.
Right.
Exactly. And you talk about the real estate lady later on that's giving that speech, and she went through that same journey. She learned every close in the book, and they weren't all working. So, it's give this a shot, because it's a much better approach.
What for you is maybe one of the bigger surprises in your lifetime that resulted in this approach of being value focused first?
Besides selling millions and millions of books.
Right. Worldwide phenomenon.
Obvious,
it's how I built my business anyway, before the book came out. So to me, it's a natural thing. And I think, again, it was from watching my parents and just seeing that. So to me, there really wasn't any other way. And then as I got into the business world and saw people doing things, and sometimes they could do things that weren't necessarily right and get quick results. And oftentimes they didn't either. But whether they did or not, it was never sustainable. But the people who did things the right way, their results were often quicker and they were sustainable. But the big thing was, that I just noticed, again, those patterns of people who did things the right way were the ones that not only were more financially successful, they were happier with themselves. And so I just kind of saw life as being, like that. So I don't think it was a surprise that, that you build a business that way. It would seem to me it would be harder to build a business some other way. But I also, while John and I were very confident that the book would have a market, I don't think you can ever see when something's going to be really, when something's going to take off like that, which it did. And it was really, aside from John's wonderful storytelling, it was the fact that so many people got behind it who, when they read it, it wasn't anything they needed to know. It was just simply something they related to.
Yeah.
And so we got our early adopters, our first adopters, if you will, we were getting lots of emails from them saying, yes, this is how I built my business. Yeah. This is how I did this. But nobody believes me, right? Yeah. Because the people working for them grew up with the same TV shows and movies that we all saw that paint the successful business person as the ruthless, horrible, whatever. Yeah. And again, doesn't mean those don't exist. Of course, we live in the real world.
I bought a few cars from a few of those guys. So.
You know what? But you know what though? The automobile salespeople who are the most sustainably successful and really, really do well, those are the ones that their customers absolutely love and adore.
Love them.
And not only buy from them every, the few, but they refer everybody to them too.
Yeah.
So sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Works in every case. I'm going to take a little different approach here because I'm sure you get these questions. We live in a broken world. The world can be crazy at times. Yeah. Human beings are messy.
Yeah.
Is it possible to overgive? And how do you protect yourself from being taken advantage of? Are there signs that you're giving in the wrong place? This has to be questions that you get.
Yeah, and I appreciate those questions a lot. So I don't think it's a matter of giving too much, or because remember, when we talk about giving, we're talking about providing value to others. It's Are you giving appropriately? Okay, so let's look at this in a couple different ways. One is, again, when we talked about value being in the eyes of the beholder, we need to make sure we're giving value in a way that other person sees it as being of value. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's either worthless or even counterproductive. Okay, right. So we have to focus on that, and that goes back to, again, asking questions and knowing what that person. Okay, but here's another thing: can you be? I think part of your question, Bret, was, can you be taken advantage of by being a go-giver, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. First, yes, because anyone can be taken advantage of. People who are con artists can be taken advantage of. So anyone can be taken advantage. So the quick answer is yes, anyone can be. However, if you are someone who considers yourself to be a giver, okay, and you find yourself constantly being taken advantage of as a pattern. I'm not saying every so often. I mean, we're human beings, unless we never leave the house. At some point, it's going to happen. I'm talking about if someone finds themselves as a pattern being taken advantage of. I'll just first say that if that's the case, you're being taken advantage of not because you're a giving person. You're being taken advantage of because you're doing things in a certain way that is creating the environment for people to take advantage of you.
Very interesting.
Okay? So why would this happen? And it's almost always, I would say always, on an unconscious basis. No one gets up in the morning and says, hey, I wonder if I can find someone to take advantage of me today. But someone may not feel emotionally worthy of not being taken advantage of. Again, that's unconscious. Or they may get some kind of payoff from it. And again, it's always unconscious. I can't stress that enough. It might be, that the payoff is, well, it gives me an excuse for not doing everything I need to be successful. He or she would be successful, but the poor person always being taken advantage of. Or maybe there's a payoff in terms of attention, negative attention. Oh, so-and-so, they're so good, but they're always being taken advantage. Again, I'm not saying that's the case with anyone, but there's always a payoff, even though that payoff is unconscious. So my suggestion would be that if someone sees themselves, and who's listening to this and sees themselves first, there's no judgment there. It's just, we all grow up according to different beliefs, circumstances that have happened, the tools that we have or that we're given to deal with things. So the first thing is just understanding, if that's you, first, congratulations for realizing that, because, a problem that has not been acknowledged cannot be cured, right? So the first thing is, you accept that right now that is the pattern that you've had. Then you say, okay, why is that? Why is it that I'm always putting myself in that position for that to happen? Okay. Then you start questioning premises when things are happening, or you feel like you're about to say yes to something that you shouldn't, or that you're about to ask, why am I doing this? Especially if I kind of sense that there's something about this that's not quite right. Why am I doing it anyway? What in my past has caused me to, and by the way, there's nothing wrong and everything right about seeing a professional counselor about that too. Right. And really getting into, the reason for that, because none of us should live a life where we're being taken advantage of on a constant basis. And it's not joyful, and it's not something that is helpful or productive in any way. Also, some people think, well, if you're a go-giver, you've got to say yes to everybody, and you've got to, no, that's not what being a go-giver is about at all. In fact, as a go-giver, you tend to be very, very successful, and as such, you've always got people asking you to do things. And, no one has the time, the energy, the bandwidth, the desire, or whatever, to do everything that people ask them to do. It's not always appropriate to do so, and it's not. So you've got to be able to say no. A go-giver must be able to say no, but to do it in a way that honors the other person, as well as honoring their own boundaries. Would you like me to share a quick way to do that?
Oh, yes,
of course,
please.
that'd be great.
So let's say you are asked to serve on a committee. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something you really don't want to do. For whatever reason, you just don't want to do it. Okay. And so again, there's nothing self-sacrificial about being a go-giver, So unless it's a life and death situation, no, if you don't want to do it, you shouldn't do it. So now, how do you say no? Well, there are a couple ways that have been taught that I think are a bit counterproductive. I'll just share those right quick. One is, well, no is a complete sentence. I get what they mean when they say that. What they mean is you shouldn't feel compelled to say yes. Right, I understand that, I agree. But to say no is a complete sentence, nah, there are a few things wrong with that. First, it's just rude. I mean, imagine someone asks you, they obviously they respect you, they ask you to serve in this committee. No. Well, that's a complete sentence, but it's not a really good complete sentence.
Right.
It's going to cause them to probably feel insulted and not ask you to do anything again, which, you may want to have the doors open to. But also it probably and hopefully would go against your core values of treating people with respect and kindness. So I would say that's not a good way to say no. Then there's the old, well, just tell like a little kind of harmless lie, like I don't have time. The problem with that is, first, it's not that you don't have time, it's that you don't value doing the thing as much as you'd rather not do it, which is, again, is fine. But if you say, I don't have time, that other person who hears this excuse all the time is probably going to give you a compelling reason why time is not an issue. Then you're really stuck. Now you either have to admit that you are fibbing, which, isn't really good, or to save face, you've got to, take the gig. When you say you don't have time, they say, oh, okay, that's okay. We're going to be doing it again in 6 months. I'll get back to you then. So you've just kicked.
Or you say you're currently in a coma and this no comment came from your mother or something like that.
Right. So I think doing those are just not kind of the way you want to go. So I have a very simple way to do it. And when people practice this, it is absolutely game changing. And it's simply this. Again, they ask you to serve on a committee, which you really don't want to. And you simply say, thank you so much. While it's not something I'd like to do, please know how honored I am to be asked.
Yeah.
And that's it. So what you've done is you said, oh, thank you, or you could say, thank you so much. So you've thanked them. While it's not something I'd like to do, or while it's not something I'd like to take on, or however your style is, while it's not something I'd like to do, so you're letting them know you're not going to be doing it. Please know how honored I am to be, or you could say, please know how grateful I am to be asked. Again, whatever you're comfortable with. What you didn't do is you didn't give them an objection to hang on to that they can then answer. Okay.
Right.
You just politely, kindly, and with honor let them know that as nice as it was for you to ask, it's not something that you're going to do. Now, by the way, there are times, depending upon the relationship you have with that person and the circumstances, that, yeah, you do need to say maybe why you can't do it. Again, as long as it's something that you really can't and that it's not something they can come back to, But by and large, no, you don't have to. Just you use those words. Thank you. Thank you so much. While it's not something I would like to do, please know how grateful. Or please know how honored I am.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, handling that kindly, honestly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful
kindness,
approach.
And that's the go-giver way to say no.
Yeah. One of the things I've read your book through many times, just sometimes for that little refresher. And over the weekend, we reread it also and just wanting to make sure we were fresh for the conversation. And there's 2 points in the book that every time I read it, get me. I get teary-eyed. The first point is receptivity, like being receptive to the good things coming your way.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, it's when it all comes home, full circle. So, is receptivity one of the harder laws for people to adopt? And do you have advice on how how to be receptive to those good things?
Yeah. And yes, that's the most difficult one for practically everyone. And there's a good reason for it, and I'll share in just a moment. So first of all, the law of receptivity, which says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving, simply means this. It's understanding that, you breathe out, you also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other, it's both. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving, you breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving are simply two sides. They're not opposite concepts, actually. They're two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. But here's why it's so difficult for so many. The world around us gives us an absolutely horribly negative message about prosperity, about abundance, about business, about money, right? We see it, we hear it from everywhere. And so this gets into people's heads, the conscious, sure, but more insidiously, the unconscious. So people from the time they're, born, a lot of times from a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture, cultural mores, they hear all these negative, horrible, anti-prosperity messages. That can really get to someone. And so if consciously you're taught, let's put it this way. If you watch any really, popular TV show or especially movie, you'll notice there are two major characters types represented. There are the good people who are always struggling and they're poor, but they're honest and they're happy, right? But they're always being put down, pushed around, stepped on, stepped over, taken advantage of by who? The evil rich people.
Right.
Who are greedy and awful and horrible and have no values and just want to hurt people, right? Well, this is everywhere. We hear these messages all the time from all over. So you think about a person who grows up and is taught, honesty, kindness, treating people well, right? But they think unconsciously that to make money and do well in business, you've got to be ruthless and horrible and step on people, right? So they grow up and they start bringing value to lots of people, and they start to bring in and put themselves in a position of bringing in a lot of money and prosperity and abundance and happiness and all these things. But the unconscious, which we know in a war between the unconscious and the conscious, the unconscious is always going to win. The unconscious says, well, wait a second. If you're doing really well financially, if you're making a lot of money, you must have done it by stepping on someone's toes or being dishonest or being, right? Again,
Right.
This is, and this is just, this is society. So my suggestion is this, couple things. One is make a study of prosperity. There are people out there like Randy Gage the late Bob Proctor, David Nagel, a woman named Ellen Rogan, Sharon Lecter, Ken Honda, all these great people who speak and teach on prosperity consciousness. They write, they blog, they post, they speak, they have video, everywhere. Study them. Study prosperity and get those good messages into your mind. And you'll notice 99.9% of what they talk about is not the how-to, it's more the how to get past all those unconscious blocks messages that keep that prosperity and goodness from coming to you. The other is begin to, again, you've heard me say before, question premises. So when you hear something, when you hear someone say, well, millionaires or billionaires shouldn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. Ask yourself why. What's the premise there? How does having millionaires and billionaires hurt people, hurt others, or does it? Does it maybe help people? Mm-hmm. Now, if that person, dig deeper. If that person made their money by dishonest means, well, they should be in jail, of course. But if you really do a study, you find that most people who are millionaires and billionaires made their money by creating something that other people wanted to buy. Mm-hmm. So everyone got served in the process, right? Everyone benefited, and they earned a lot of money. Okay, but with that money, not only is it money that they have, but because they employ a lot of people, and those people are earning money that they can then go take and they can spend at the other stores in town, and those people have a job because there's people who are spending money at their stores, and they can feed their families, and they're feeding their families, and the money they have invested, other people are right, and it helps. So again, why? There's a woman was telling me that she and her husband were taking was it his brother or it was somebody that the husband knew. But anyway, taking him through a neighborhood, and it was a ritzy part of town, and they went past a really, really nice mansion. And the young man said, "Oh, I wonder what that person had to do to get that house." Mm-hmm. Right? Like in other words, right. And she said, "Well, she said, well, let's look at it another way. How many people did that person have to serve, directly or indirectly, in order to get that house?" Right? So let's check our premises and ask why we believe these things. Who did we learn it from? Who did they learn it from? And right, mm-hmm. and so forth. Then start building on your small successes. So when somebody gives you a compliment, assuming it's an appropriate compliment, right? Somebody gives you a compliment, rather than just reflexively going, "Oh, no," instead say, "Oh, thank you so much."
Because we all do that, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, it's so strange.
Instead, "Thank you so much." Or someone holds a door open for you and says, "Oh, no, I couldn't." Says, "Oh, it's very kind. Thank you." Mm-hmm. Right? Build on your allow your, start to build your receptivity muscle, right?
Okay. Yes.
When you get a little bit of money coming in, say thank you, whether it's thank God or thank the universe or however you understand life, and say thank you. Right? Yeah. When you get more in, so again, you're practicing receiving. So it's like the person who wants to lift 300 pounds. They don't start by lifting 300 pounds if they haven't done it before. They start with 50 pounds, and then 60 and 70 and 100 and 150, and they build. They build up.
I like that. There's actually a few things there. So it's you are practicing that receptivity muscle. But you're showing this sign of appreciation.
Yes.
But you're also, oh shoot, I just lost my. See, this is how new of a concept it is for me. I'm like losing my train of thought.
No, but you brought up a great point about the gratitude aspect. Gratitude's a huge part of prosperity. Mm-hmm. We just cannot be prosperous without gratitude.
And I don't want to give away too much of the book, but there was a amazing point in that book that I think you teared up a little on. You were pretty emotional through this area, so this struck home for you.
Should I grab a tissue?
Yeah, be careful. Brace yourself for the humidity. But there was this comment talking about nature and how human beings expel carbon dioxide
Right.
and plants bring it in and then therefore expel oxygen. And there's this kind of natural giving and receiving that occurs. You talked about the inhalation and exhalation and keeping to exhale in one port, but that one kind of visual element I thought was so amazing to help me overcome, because it is uncanny. I'm the one guy that's like, no, I'll hold the door for you, or
Let me get your
shucks,
bag.
don't say that. And you feel uncomfortable when you get a compliment, and maybe I need counseling, I guess. But it is just built into our nature that way. And when I read that one kind of visualization, I was like, man, that is brilliant. I kind of get it now.
Yeah, there's this symbiotic nature
it's
behind
okay,
it all.
right? Yeah, the symbiotic nature was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I know what it is too. It's also looking at things through a positive lens. So it's when your example of somebody going, well, what do they have to do to earn that? It's not with not through a lens of negative curiosity. It's more because they've done wonderful things for others. So looking through this positive lens. I understand that this book was a collaboration, and I haven't had the chance to meet your writing partner, John David Mann. What would you say are some of the yin and the yang to your relationship? How did that collaboration work so well together?
Yeah, well, so I met John, I think it was in the late 1990s.
1900s, I went.
In the 1900s, we're both very, very old. We bring a lot of ancient wisdom to the, or the early 2000s. I'm not sure, but he was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I was writing a monthly column for. And even back then, the people in his world and his niche, they knew he was just a brilliant, brilliant writer. And our running joke was that he'd edit my articles, my column, and he'd send back notes. And he was always so polite about it and so kind. And he'd say, well, I took this here and I cut this and I put this here. Is that okay? Or, whatever. And the running joke was it was every month I'd write back and say, John, not only is it okay, you write my stuff better than I write my stuff. And so when I had the thought about, because my first book was called Endless Referrals.
Right.
And it was about how to cultivate those win-win relationships that were right. And so I had wanted to put it in a story form because I always loved reading business parables, and I love how stories connect with people on a deeper level. Finally, after I got to know John for a while, I said, this is the guy who I want to write this with. And I asked John if I told him about this idea, and would he be the lead writer, storyteller, and so forth. And so it's really interesting. He and his back then fiance, now wife, Anna, they were in, they live in Massachusetts, but they were visiting her mom in the Tampa, Florida area. They drove over, they took like a 4-hour drive one afternoon, and we had about a 3-hour dinner and just discussed the idea of the book, what it would be about, how we saw it taking form, and so forth. And it was still a few weeks later, because he was still very busy, and he said, I think we've got something here. Let's do this. So it really only took us a few months to write it, and that's why. And again, believe me, John was the lead writer. It was his, and so it didn't take long to write. The thing that took a long time was through our agent finding a publishing house, because we got turned down by 24 publishing houses over the course of that first year, and it was
another good lesson about perseverance, because you sold millions of these. And
it was the 25th one, Portfolio Books, which is an imprint of Penguin Random House, that finally said yes, and they turned out to be such a wonderful publishing partner. I mean, they've just been amazing, and so everything worked out exactly as it was supposed to.
And I would tell the audience, I'm that typical entrepreneur that is working all hours and always says I don't have time for anything, even good exercise. But the great thing about this book is that it's much like a TED Talks in book form. It is this perfect length that anyone can sit down and read this book. It's entertaining, it's informative, and before you know it, you've read it, and you walk away, and you're
And you're telling
honestly
everybody
enlightened. You are like, wow, this is really good. So for those of you that haven't heard of the book or think you're going to be investing months reading it, it is a perfect length. You can do it in an evening, even if you know.
So I've got to tell you a fun fact, and thank you for those very, very kind words. So aside from the other books in the series, because there are 4 books that John and I did in the Go-Giver series together, he and his wife, because now Anna is his wife, not fiance, and they've been married for like 15 years now. John and Anna wrote a book in the series called The Go-Giver Marriage. I was not involved in this one. They asked me, but I'm not married. And I thought, there's a little lack of credibility, if I'm not married, being part, And so I said, no, you guys take this one. And they did, and that's Anna's wheelhouse, because she did that kind of counseling, and they wrote a beautiful story. Together.
Gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So more to add to the queue.
And so, but they're just a fantastic couple. But John has he's co-authored books with tons of people now. He's got like 50 books out there, including a series, a murder mystery series and everything. He's amazing.
Wow. Yeah. So you have...
that would be the Go Killer series.
Right.
Yeah.
Blood and Guts, the Go-Giver one.
Yes.
You have a whole host of books behind you. What among those that are on your shelves, what is one that you pull out and share with everybody?
Yeah, so my home is, I like to say, it's comprised of books with some scattered furniture. So, there's so many, it's hard to think of just one. I would say one of my favorites is Peace, Power, and Plenty, which was written back in, I think, 1910 or 1909, I think this one was, by Orison Swett Marden, who was the original founder of Success Magazine and is often credited by people as the, progenitor of the modern personal development movement. But, even the title Peace, for inner peace, right? Power, again, not power over others, power over ourselves. And then Plenty, which is prosperity. So 3 of my favorite topics, but it's just such a beautiful book, and it's a first edition. I couldn't even take notes inside. I just took notes on the yellow stickies.
I see all those sticky notes. But there's plenty there, which tells you there's plenty of peace and power. And she wrote in that book.
And gives you peace, too.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Before we wrap up, I one more question for you. If you were going to give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, this is an easy question for me. It really is, because I think back to, let's say, 20-year-old Bob Burg, and if 66-year-old Bob Burg got to speak to 20-year-old Bob Burg, it would sound something like, "Young Bob Burg, shut up. Stop talking. You don't know anything. You think you do. You're absolutely positively sure you do. But as Mark Twain is credited as saying, whether or not he actually said this or not, it's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you're absolutely positively sure you do know that just ain't so."
That's great.
And so much of what you're sure is so ain't. So listen more.
That's awesome. Perfect.
That is absolutely
Hopefully
perfect.
20-year-old would listen. Bob Burg would listen. I don't, but probably he wouldn't have. So.
He'd be talking over 66-year-old Bob Burg.
And was also excited to hear that your writing partner also played the cello, because Em plays the cello too.
Yes. Is he still playing?
I don't think he really does, but he was when he was a young kid, I mean, he was already that good at it. And his father was a virtuoso and conductor and everything. So this is funny. So my latest book was a book on sales called Streetwise to Saleswise that I wrote with co-authored with a guy named Jeff West, a great friend of mine. And Jeff studied music. That's what he went to original school for before he got into sales. And he's a musician, and singer.
He's a magician with his music.
Magician with his music. And so I seem to get around and co-author with people who are musically inclined, and I'm totally not. When I sing in the shower, the neighborhood cats scream. So it's like. But,
we should allow you to talk about your seminar that you've got coming up in September for those that read it, is that still open? Is there still open spots for that seminar in September?
Yeah, we just got through with our last one a couple weeks ago, so we're now promoting this one. It's called Sales Wise Live Sales Mastery, and it's an event we hold at a very elegant hotel called the Ben in West Palm Beach, Florida, and it's really for entrepreneurs, salespeople, and leaders who are already successful, but they want to take their business and their success to that next level.
Where can they find that? Is that on your website? Or?
Yeah, actually, they can go to saleswiselive.com. And I'm going to spell it out because it's a little hard to, saleswiselive.com.
Great.
That's
In fact,
great.
I put it in the studio chat there as well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so we welcome people to check that out.
We'll make sure to also have a link to your website for this wonderful book, The Go-Giver, to make sure and that our audience has an opportunity to quickly find this masterpiece. Bob, it's just been a real pleasure. I can't tell you how fun this has been. When I shared with our team that we were going to have this conversation today, so many of their faces lit up because it really is for our team here. Everybody really values your philosophy
And the impact you made on Emily. I mean, it was the first time I ever heard her be speechless and then go screaming so with excitement that you were going to join us. You have been a hero of hers for as long as I've known her. So.
Well, wow. I'll just receive that with gratitude.
There you go. Just take it.
And allow it.
Yeah.
But
Receptivity. Take it in.
And please know it means a lot to me. Thank you.
That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe to stay apprised of upcoming episodes of Clothing Culture.